And now we receive our collaborator, Danny Shaw. Be welcome.
Thank you.
So, Danny, as we know, Donald Trump did not attend Joe Biden's inauguration as the 46th President of the United States, a gesture of denial and political misconduct. But on the other hand, his son's Vice President Mike Pence, the Senate Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, and House Republican Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy were absent from his departure and the farewell event. What can this symbolize for the future of Trump's political career?
Yes, Gladys, this is very symbolic that Pence and Mitch McConnell and others have turned their backs on Trump. It shows that the Republicans, the elites, are trying to really be done with Trump. But of course, Trumpism, the phenomenon of white supremacy and fascism and everything that Trump brought out of the closet is stronger than ever. So Trump, in his typically narcissistic way, thought that he deserved a whole salute, a military send-off, as if he was some great American patriot and hero. So for one of the first times in U.S. history, the outgoing president did not extend congratulations, was not part of this quote-unquote smooth transition of power. Let's remember that the U.S. capitalist project, which they often call democracy, even though it's anything but democracy, it's very important for them to sustain these illusions and project across the world internal peace and internal democracy. Trump has been an aberration for them. They want to be done with Trump. I wouldn't be surprised if this impeachment process now goes to the Senate, has some momentum in the Senate. They might get the supermajority, they might not. But they want to send a clear message to Trump that after his failed coup attempt 2 weeks ago. Some people are calling it a mob rule. Others are saying it was a failed coup attempt because, of course, to have a coup, you need military support. You need sectors of the state to cross over. And they were not able to get that whatsoever, though some random police did join in their own way or at least support it. They want to be done with Trump and they want to move on with the typical rhetoric of U.S. American exceptionalism and U.S. democracy, and that's what Joe Biden's speech really reflected today.
In his farewell speech, among other issues, Trump said he will be back in any form. Can you think this is maybe a challenging statement?
Yeah, typical Trump. And whether Trump's back or Donald Trump Jr. or one of his other family members, this is a very nepotistic project. They're going to try to continue to prey upon the American people's ignorance on centuries of segregation and white supremacy and all of the worst that we have in this society. Some of Trump's parting shots were heightened sanctions against Venezuela and Cuba. Every week in this country, we wake up to a new round of humiliating, degrading, and criminal sanctions against different people in the world. Some estimates are that 1/4 of the world's people are sanctioned and blockaded at this point. It's really crazy that Trump, another one of his parting shots, pardoned 143 other elites so that they can't get in trouble. Of course, Trump wants to pardon himself and his own family members. They think that because they're billionaires and they're elites and professional politicians that they're above the law. But among those 143 pardons in the last 24 hours, of course, we didn't see one pardon of an African-American prisoner, of a political prisoner, of an economic prisoner. The apartheid system in this country confines poor people to prison, whereas rich people get richer every day and never go.
We are confronting several technical issues, but we are trying to reconnect with Danny Shaw, who is a collaborator of us, and also he is a Western Hemisphere analyst and politics, and also in several relations with the nations. As we see, this was an historical day with Donald Trump's departures to Florida to his Mar-a-Lago home, and also not attending Joe Biden's inauguration as the 46th President of the United States. Also, as we saw, Kamala Harris was sworn in as the third black person to be ranking in the government of the United States in 200 years of history. In this case, we have seen also a different ceremony, an atypical ceremony of swearing in for a president because of COVID-19 and also because of the heavy security protocols imposed on Washington, D.C. after January 6 rioting of the Capitol Hill by Trump supporters. In this case, we saw a sea of flags, just in symbolizing, in this case, the presence in the absence of the maybe attendees and the people who wanted to be there, but for many reasons, for several reasons, could not be there. So we are trying to reconnect with our collaborator, Jenny Shaw. Danny, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, we were trying to reconnect to you. So maybe I'm retaking our conversation in some point, but I wanted to make you a question, and I want to hear your answer in this case. So Ursula von der Leyen, one of the top leaders of the European Union, said that she is in relief, everyone is in relief because of Trump's departure, but in this case she said that relief is an illusion because Trump's followers remain in the country and remain in action and thinking about how to plot and how to plan several future actions. How do you consider this? What do you believe about this statement?
I would caution against any sense of relief because Trump's social base of fascism and white supremacists, we have the Oath Keepers, we have the Three Percenters, we have the Proud Boys. We have these basically modern neo-Nazi groups. They're anti-immigrant. These are sexist groups. These are very dangerous groups. So I would caution against any sense of relief. Though Trump might be out of office, his social base is alive and well, as it has been alive and well since the 1600s and the founding of this country, which was based upon two of the largest genocides in history, the displacement and genocide of the Native American people and the kidnapping of millions of Africans from the shores of that continent. So we have a long road ahead of us. The rhetoric of Biden was absolutely predictable, but I would say pathetic. So many of us are used to this rhetoric of American exceptionalism and we're the greatest and we're the standard bearer and democracy this and democracy that. They've really made a mockery of the word democracy. Anybody who's alert and critical can see right through Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's rhetoric and the Star-Spangled Banner and the Pledge of Allegiance. These things do not represent the vast majority of people in this country who've been exploited and oppressed and alienated by this system, whether they're African American or they're women or the LGBTQ community or poor whites and workers. So we should have no illusions about what Joe Biden represents. Joe Biden represents, for capitalism and imperialism, business as usual.
Policy of the new administration, this policy of trying to reverse Trump's policies also, and Trump's maybe the rules, the norms that he implemented in his administration. Do you think these are empty words somehow?
I think there is a lot of empty rhetoric. At the same time, the Democrats will represent a slight move to the center. This talk that we're going to receive the rest of our stimulus checks in the form of $1,400 to complete on top of the $600 that we received on January 1st. This, of course, does not include 34 to 36 million Americans who, because they have some issues with the criminal justice system or have been accused of crimes, they have never received a dime from the federal government. So the most alienated will be further alienated and forgotten. This does not include millions of immigrants. We still have immigrant families separated. We see this caravan of Honduran immigrants forced to flee a narco dictatorship of Juan Orlando Hernandez. Here, the entire media is reporting against them as though they're the threat against democracy, when the greatest threat against democracy, and in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, whose birthday we celebrated yesterday, the greatest purveyor in the violence in the history of the world has been the United States. That's the true threat to democracy. So we have to continue to have these dialogues, these critical dialogues with the people of the United States and the people of the world so that they understand who the true enemy is. So our expectations with Biden in terms of foreign policy towards Iran, towards Cuba, towards Russia, Zimbabwe, China, Nicaragua, Venezuela are not high. We understand that imperialism is imperialism, and the nature of imperialism is to continue to try to suffocate, starve, and blockade all of these countries in an effort to recolonize those countries. So whether it's Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, it's a continuity of those same capitalist and imperialist policies.
Danny, I couldn't help to notice on your wall that poster that says, "I am Cuba." So being a Cuban, a Cuban national, I can't help myself from asking you. So what can we expect, the Cuban people, from Biden's administration in terms of foreign policy towards us? Because we know Obama administration had a line of foreign policy towards us. In this case, Trump was imposing new sanctions, being more severe to us. But now, in this case, we're expecting, can we expect something different from Biden's administration?
Yeah, buena pregunta, Gladys, y un abrazo al pueblo cubano que me han enseñado mucho. So I think it's important to highlight that Biden is now putting into his administration many of the Obama-era diplomats. And I think what Biden's going to try to do is a backdoor strategy, a Trojan horse strategy, what's called los golpes blandos, the soft coups, something like we saw in San Isidro. In a blockaded country like Cuba, when you start floating around U.S. dollars, people who have their currencies been devalued by the International Monetary Fund and Chase Manhattan banks and the quote-unquote international community. What does the international community mean? I mean, it means the U.S. and their junior allies, England, France, Japan. So they've done everything to distort and further underdevelop and suffocate the Cuban economy. So Cuban youth in particular are very susceptible to the National Endowment for Democracy and U.S. aid and their so-called projects to promote democracy. They come in with funding streams. They come in with international visas and platforms and promises. And these are all ways to manipulate the Cuban people. So whether these are hard coups, the way that Salvador Allende was overthrown in Chile, or the soft coups like they've been trying to use in Venezuela and in Cuba and now in Iran, the Cuban people are experts. They've stayed in power for 62 years, despite every effort by the U.S. to overthrow them. So I think it's really important to understand esos golpes blandos, these soft coups, and the attempts that the Biden administration is going to try to do, always under the rhetoric of trying to restore democracy in Cuba. What they mean by restore democracy is that they have not been able to recolonize Cuba, control the economy of Cuba. Cuba has immense wealth, immense potential through tourism, through its nickel, through its agriculture. So I think we'll see the same unfettered aggression against Cuba, even if the tactics have changed, the objective is the same, and that's recolonization.
Well, thank you, Danny, for your criteria, your opinions, and also un abrazo desde Cuba, a hug, an embrace from Cuba. And now we will continue with our news brief. So now let's check the Biden administration's